Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. This is just going to be a rambling talk, a chit-chat, much ado about nothing. But I'm going to start by reading some poetry, which you may find a little bit tedious. I suppose it will, I would guess, go on about 5 minutes. Golden Apollo, that through heaven wide scatterest the rays of light and truth's beams. In lucent words my darkling verses dight, and wash my earthy mind in thy clear streams, that wisdom may descend in fairy dreams. All while the jocund hours in thy train scatter their fancies at thy poet's feet. And when thou yieldst to night thy wide domain, let rays of truth enlight his sleeping brain. For brutish Pan in vain might thee essay, with tinkling sounds to dash thy nervous verse, sound without sense. Yet in his rude affray, for ignorance is folly's leasing nurse, and love of folly needs none other curse. Midas the praise hath gained of lengthened ears, for which himself might deem him ne'er the worse, to sit in council with his modern peers, and judge of tinkling rhymes and elegances terse. And thou, Mercurius, with that winged brow, dost mount aloft into the yielding sky, and through heaven's halls thy airy flight dost throw, entering with holy feet to where on high Jove weighs the counsel of futurity. Then, laden with eternal fate, dost go down like a falling star from autumn sky, and o'er the surface of the silent deep dost fly. If thou arrivest at the sandy shore, where naught but envious, hissing adders dwell, thy golden rod, thrown on the dusty floor, can charm to harmony with potent spell. Such is sweet eloquence that does dispel envy and hate, that thirst for human gore, and cause in sweet society to dwell vile savage minds that lurk in lonely cell. O Mercury, assist my laboring sense, that round the circle of the world would fly, as the winged eagle scorns the towery fence of alpine hills round his high eyrie, and searches through the corners of the sky, sports in the clouds to hear the thunder's sound, and see the winged lightnings as they fly. Then, bosomed in an amber cloud around, plumes his wide wings, and seeks soul's palace high. And thou, O warrior maid, invincible, armed with the terrors of almighty Jove, Pallas, Minerva, maiden terrible, lovest thou to walk the peaceful, solemn grove, in solemn gloom of branches interwove? Or bear'st thy aegis o'er the burning field, where, like the sea, the waves of battle move? Or have thy soft, piteous eyes beheld the weary wanderer through the desert rove? Or does the affected man thy heavenly bosom move? That's really clumsy and fairly bad. I forgot to give you the title. The title is actually written Imitation of Spener. He forgot the S, so the editorial supplied that, Imitation of Spencer. And the poet is none other than a very young William Blake, I am sure. And that was obviously not the correct form for him. One cannot blame him for trying, but it has all of the markings of youth and of clumsy prosody. I mean, there's a lot bad in there. One of the stanza, it's in the Spenserian stanza. One of them is somehow bungied up because it's only 8 lines instead of 9, but I'm not breaking it down to analyze it. His genius obviously went in a different direction than that. He still remains one of the greatest geniuses of the English lyric. But one other thing, of course, that can be said about it is it didn't sound anything at all like Spenser. But I haven't revisited that for a long time. I'm sure I read that last probably before I ever even attempted that stanza. If not, maybe around the time that I first did. Yesterday morning, I posted a video of my poem, Spenserian Stanzas on a Gross Miscarriage of Justice. And I've talked a little bit about that stanza a couple of places. I have a video reading The Eve of St. Agnes by John Keats, done in that stanza form. He had 42 of them. And I just put a link yesterday in the notes section or community tab on YouTube for a poem by a guy named Palmer in that stanza, which is really beautifully done. And of course, Shelley has his "Oh, weep for Adonais, he is dead." I can't think of too many other examples. Of course, Byron handled it. I don't think Childe Harold is very good. And when I talked about John Keats, I said the first time that I ever read that poem, I was very young and new to poetry, and I read halfway through, so about 21 stanzas, and I fell back exhausted. And then the next day I tackled it again, and I got through all the way. And then I haven't looked back since. I'm not going to read you the whole thing again, but I will read some of this first one. Than liberty, what could there be more precious? April 14th, 2025, will be remarked a day when winds capricious in strange concatenation did contrive a people of its freedom to deprive. ... I was quite pleased that the date was able to fit in metrically without any kind of finagling or altering, because it is, of course, an important day in our history. The day that effectively our democracy ceded its ground to a dictatorship. Now, whether that lasts is another matter. What was the Benjamin Franklin quote I used? If you can keep it. Well, same with a dictatorship, Mr. Trump. If you can keep it, we'll see. This poem that I read, I probably should put links to some of this stuff in the description box. Turns out to be only 34 stanzas. So line length, that would be 34 times 9, whatever that is. And I started at 9 o'clock at night. And I think I was working on it till the wee hours. And I couldn't finish. I knew I was real close. And I was exhausted. So I crashed. And then in the morning, I typed it all out. So yesterday morning, I typed it all out. And completed it. And then I made the video reading it. And I didn't write much the rest of that day because I was plumb exhausted. And I have not touched the form for 22 years. So the last time I wrote a Spenserian stanza was 22 years ago. I was physically stronger then. People never talk about just the physical stamina that is required if one is going to write poetry. And if one is going to write something, say, in that stanza format, one must be pretty well healthy. Not that I've ever been all that healthy, but one must be able to accommodate the strenuous exertion of doing such a thing. And because I knew it was a momentous occasion, I knew that it had to be given something of weight, the stanza of weight. I don't think there's a greater stanza in the English language. There's that thing Byron came up with, which I don't particularly care for. I forget what it's called. And there's other little things here and there, but as far as just a rudimentary building block, you can't do better than Spenser. So I think I did about 30 of them, or 32 maybe. What did I say? It was 34? Because I think I only had to do 2 of them in the morning. And that tired me out so much that I did nothing the rest of the day. Towards the evening, I put out a couple of these little piddly poems that I've been doing for a good month now, something like that. Here is my notebook. You can, now it's hard, I can't say what kind of progress I've made too easily because I just wrote, I knew I needed to have better concentration, and so which I've done sometimes, I just used the right-hand page of the notebook. So I've got blanks on the back of all of that, which I am working to fill in now. But so counting the pages is going to be harder. Let me see where I'm at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So 30 times 2 is 60, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8, 9. 69 pages used up. So it's a 70 sheet notebook. So I'm almost halfway with it. And my plan was to keep writing these poems until the regime falls, also when I plan to cut this mop top off. But I am detecting a change in the arc of this writing project. I said I'm not going to compile them into a book. I mean, that could change if I suddenly found myself in, where's a nice place, Paris or something, with a word processor, and I happened to have my manuscript with me. And free time and lots of croissants and coffees and stuff like that. Then I could devote myself to working on it and trying to compile it into a book. I won't be doing it here, that is for sure. And I probably won't do it anyhow. But I realized, well, for one thing, I have more than enough poems to make it a book. I mean, I'm sure I would have to do some weeding and do some correcting here and there. Because when you push things out that fast, you wind up with errors that you just don't realize. And since all of these poems have been sort of just, I can't think of the right word, purpose-driven, not art for art's sake by any means, but art fulfilling sort of a social purpose. I wasn't all that concerned about little errors as they slipped in. You would find that if you get my book, Small Poems, as well. Not that anything else is exempt of errors, mind you. But the arc of the project seems to be changing, and it would be, because this date represents probably the most momentous date in any of our lives on the political scene. I mean, really quite incredible to have lived through that. And I make no predictions for how long the regime will last, but since I have done this piece, I feel that some of the spirit has gone out. I still did a number of poems today, and until something changes, I intend to keep on doing it. I thought about it because I'm writing at a less rapid clip. I'm not writing so many. I have more free time to just stare into the void. I mean, I'm still, as I say, I was devastated when I finished it. You can't imagine what writing a big work does to you. And I thought, well, maybe I should just try to get back to my books. And then I thought, no, the time is not right for that yet, because I'm still involved on this project, this social service project, I guess, even though I am calling forth the muse less frequently per day. Of course, things can happen to change that. But in many respects, the topic has exhausted itself. When I was really pushing it, and if I didn't have a great drive or impulse to write something, I thought, well, I can just put something out insulting Donald Trump or something like that. Well, the interest is completely gone there. For me, as a figure, he was necessary to include in some of these poems because, of course, he is the figurehead of this moment. The movement was not something that he created. The movement has been going on, at least since the George H.W. Bush presidency. But he happened to fall in place, and he will be a noteworthy figure to future historians insofar as anybody cares to look back and study this, which is difficult to assess. I mean, the likelihood of that, for a variety of reasons. I just don't know how well the planet is going to be doing. But I would think there will be some interest. Somebody will have to now write a complete history of the United States from 1776 until 2 days ago, with probably a denouement or a appendix or postscript to take you at least to the end of the Trump regime. And then some generalized thoughts looking forward. But I'm not a historian. But given that, as I say, the arc of the book is changing, this is out of character to everything else in the book. And for something like that, you would not want it to be placed at the center of the book. You would not want it at the front of the book. It would have to be towards the back end, which is how it's going. Now, when I assembled the poems for small poems, I had no idea when they were written. Normally, I would just go for sequential, date composed, that's the date it falls in the book. Normally. And sometimes, if it's a compilation like my thing, The Rip of Gales, well, I had no idea. I just put it into some kind of order. In the case of these poems, because I was posting them on YouTube, I have a good idea of the general order, the time frame, because I know for the ones that are longer than a minute, I know those exactly sequentially because I posted them sequentially, except for one or two where I forgot. Somehow I made them public, but the connection must have been bad, and so it didn't go public. So they fell out of line. I have no way to track that. And then, of course, the ones that fall into the shorts, YouTube shorts, those are all sequential in themselves. And so with the dates, I can get fairly close. It's not really important in something like this. With small poems, I just, because I was actually sitting down at the computer putting them into the book, I just wanted it so that there were not a lot of goofy breaks. So I, as much as I could manage it, I put it so that one complete poem would be on a complete page. And if it was, I don't know what it was, like 8 stanzas would give you run over, I would do it so that it would be, you would at least have a full part on one page, or however, I can't remember now what my criteria were, but the sequence of that was not important. And for these poems, it wouldn't matter either, not at all. I mean, you could go with the YouTube dates roughly, and that would be good enough. And that is how I would handle it, I think. But none of it's typed out. I would have to probably check the audio up against my notebook, because the notebook would be really hard. And in some cases, I gave it a title just to throw it up on YouTube. Like I said, I really didn't care. I don't care. But were I to put it into a book, that is how I would do it. it was nice to get back to the Spenserian stanza after, what did I say, 22 years? Yeah, a little less than that, a few months less than that, maybe. And nice to know that I could do it. But it really does call to mind that so much of the writing instruction that people get from schools is dead wrong. I've talked about my relationship with the muse. That is because, and I'm only speaking for poetry here, I cannot speak for anything else. It is something of a sacred activity, or at least a spiritual activity, maybe. And it's not to say that work is not required on your part, you being the author, but the major impetus of any of this stuff is external. It's just the world coming through and putting this onto your piece of paper. I mean, you have to be a little bit canny in some ways. So in the case of this poem, I knew, right off, this is momentous. This is important. And I knew that it needed a structure that could signify that. And so that's why I went with the Spenserian stanza. And fortunately, I was not a novice just out of the gate, as William Blake. You're not going to be able to do something like that without adequate preparation. And I have at least 800 pages worth of that, because the Requiem was 404 pages and the other one was longer. So the one was done in 1998 and the other one in 2003. And actually, the book of 2003, the Resurgiat, it's a terrible title. I hope somebody will change it if they come up with something better, or just leave it, I don't care. But that was the book I wanted to write back in 1998. And I had my notebook and tried to do it and just could not. And I got a whole bunch of pages that were garbage. And then the other book, the Requiem, just came out, popped out. Sometimes you think you want to go this way, but the muse wants you to go that way. So I did. And that was the last of it. I thought, okay. And then it really did surprise me 5 years later, a little bit more than 5 years later, actually, because the Requiem was done in February. Or finish in February. I don't know precisely. And so slightly more than 5 years later. And then, but it popped out. So the one I had been trying to write 5 years earlier, but the muse didn't want me to write, popped out. But all of this is external. And that has, in one form or another, been absolutely everything that I've written. Now, I'm not saying that another person cannot tap into these things. I mean, if you're lucky, people will be. That's why a friend of mine says there tend to be like poets appear in groups of 3 or something like that. Well, I think it's more than that. I mean, if you look at the Romantic period, you've got more than 3, definitely. At least 6 major names in English, and even more than that, I would say. And there was just a lot of this ferment in the air, and all of these men individually drew upon it. There has been so much. I wish I could see what other poets were writing at this time. I am sure I will never see it. And I think, as William Blake said, chances are, if you got to see it, you wouldn't like it. It doesn't matter, of course. And it's not to say that having all of this external ferment requires a time period of obvious tumult, such as we are living through now. It can be more subtle than that, I am sure. And so I am keeping with my plan to keep writing these daily poems, but I expect there to be a little dropping off in quantity. But I'm not going to start reading as yet because I need my focus still to be with this. And I would wish that that meant that the regime would be falling soon, but I don't think that can be counted on. But one thing that can be said for certain is that things have changed. Prior to the 14th, we were still living in a free society. And all of the poems that had been written were responding to that. So I think that is what is causing the shift that I am feeling. There is certainly no sort of a premonition, because I do not think we as a people are ready for any kind of a change. We have the dictatorship that we wanted. And if we do not spontaneously grow a leadership of an opposition, and an opposition that is worthy, then a toppling of the regime would be worse than anything. We really need political actors on the scene that are up to the task. And so if this has to go on 4 more years or whatever, I mean, Trump, of course, is not planning on leaving. We know that. This idea of a third term is just to own the libs or get people worked up, of course, because he and his crew intend to hold him up so long as he is capable, as long as he's not just completely gaga. And I think he does a pretty good job of restraining himself and rising to the moment when he needs to. I mean, he's pretty good at that. And so they will prop him up for 25 more years. I mean, if CGI or whatever, if virtual reality can create a version of him that does the job, he could be the dictator forever. I'm sure his followers wouldn't mind. But some of them are starting to peel off at this point because they are being hurt. There was one comment I was, well, I won't go into that. I'll leave that for a different video. So I expect, regardless of what happens to the regime at this point, that the poems will probably start to peter out. I can't say Will I fill this notebook? It's quite possible I will. So that will make it 2 notebooks. A hefty size book, like the size of small poems, probably. But also the fact that we have taken a giant step into the danger of the times. Now that could change too. I mean, that there is no saying. Trump is not so capable as he imagines himself to be. And of course, he is surrounded by like-minded idiots for the most part. I'm not using the term idiot literally, but they're, I think you could say morons literally, and they're not particularly smart people, but to use the word canny, they do have a canniness, but he really has been the central figure that has held all of this together at this time. And it was a perfect storm. And I don't know that another person can do that. But I think he can do it for a while. Of course, in the phrase that he is famous, everything he touches dies, which is true. And you look at everything that's going wrong, possibly within a month or so, people are not going to be getting their Social Security checks, people that are dependent upon it. I was anticipating it in not too long of a time, but that will cause further problems that he probably can't handle. He picked the wrong trading partner to attempt to bully with China. He just doesn't know what he's doing, and that is going to have dramatic repercussions as well. I mean, the economics stuff has never been of a particular interest to me. As I say, I was glad I was reading all that archaeology just before this moment and really getting a sense that manufacturing is something that China knows very well since a long time ago. And inherent to that, the distribution process, the assembling, the transporting all of the basic elements, the minerals, and so forth. China knows what it's doing and has great experience. In our system, we thought we only needed to think a year ahead or something like that, and that is all Trump does. And I think some people will be surprised when they wake up. Some people may never wake up, but some are, and I appreciate that. Somebody came and left a comment and thanked me for the poem and said, I voted for this man. I thought he was a good man, and I was wrong. Well, you have to accept that. I mean, yeah. That's very sincere. I mean, that's how it is, and I understand. I once said that the first presidential vote that I ever cast was for Ronald Reagan. I guess that was 1980. Really stupid, wasn't it? Yeah, that really gave the great impetus to all this. To this day, I don't really see a lot of difference between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Donald and Ronald, I guess. That's fitting. And so I'm hoping that this book project will just peter out. I keep calling it a book project, but yeah, I mean, there's not much that needs to be done. A quick run through correcting errors and all of that. But I will leave that to somebody else or to myself if all of a sudden we are all in some kind of, I'm trying to think of the word for like a real happy place. I can't think of one. It wouldn't be utopia because I think that means like no place or something. So I think maybe that's all I have to say. I've already talked 40 minutes and not really said much of anything. I think the odds are that I will probably never tackle the Spenserian stanza again. I often would do things in threes, so I have two big poems in that, and I could see it would be possible. For my physical condition, I could do a third one if things conspired to let that happen, but I don't think it will happen. I'm pretty sure that won't. I only have two of the books of sonnets, and I think it will just be two of the big poems as well, which is good. I'm quite satisfied. So I will let that peter out if that's what it wants to do. I hope we can close the door on this period sooner, but there is way too much unresolved and in the air right now. It was certainly an ignominious end to the Republic project of our forebears, I guess one should say. But couldn't one say that most empires have an ignominious end? It's all right. I mean, these things happen and we go on living. Yeah, so I'll leave that. If you get a chance, check out my poem in the Spenserians, mostly written on the 14th, but a little bit on the morning of the 15th when I made that video. I'll put links to this stuff in the description box. Everybody who has stuck around, thank you very much. I appreciate everybody who does come to my channel. It's kind of really in a strange place though, since it's been serving as a booktube channel for 2 years now, I would say. Not lately, it's shifted back to its origins with being more politically oriented. And then who knows? Who knows? Well, I will not say any more. I will leave these thoughts for another time. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.